Hello everyone. Before we begin today, I just wanted to address some of the comments in a few of the videos I've made. And there have been some mistakes. I've said a few things that have been wrong. For example, in my most recent video of the top 10 weirdest species to be discovered in 2011, I may have referenced a fossil that I said had been discovered 500 million years ago. Of course, I did not mean the fossil was discovered 500 million years ago. It was discovered quite recently of a species that lived 500 million years ago. Now, I know most of you who noticed that mistake mentioned I probably misspoke. It's just a slip of the tongue. Nonetheless, I was wrong. I'm more than happy to admit it. And I'll try to be more careful in the future. And that sort of makes me kind of happy, actually, to know that there are people watching my stuff and making sure that if I screw up, they're going to tell me about it and I can fix it and get it right. Now, that's not always the case in terms of science. And when it comes to these small things, it's very easy to say, oh, I just slipped up, sorry. It gets a little tougher when big things go wrong or when big mistakes are made. I only hope that if I make one of those big mistakes in the future, I'll be big enough, pun perhaps not intended there, to admit that I'm wrong. And that's not always the case in science. There are some scientists who are the equivalent of Rush Limbaugh, who just, when they're caught out making a mistake or saying something ridiculous, instead of saying, my mistake, I'll try to correct myself and be a little more accurate in the future, they just get louder and louder and, they basically become loud, obnoxious assholes. And I never want to be a loud, obnoxious asshole. So, thanks for keeping me honest, everyone, and I'll try to do better in the future. And this actually leads into the story I wanted to talk about today. It involves certain loud, obnoxious assholes who can't admit they're wrong. This story comes out of South Korea. The Ministry of Education, Science, and Technology have announced that certain examples of evolution will be removed from their textbook. A campaign by the Society for Textbook Revise, that perhaps makes more sense in Korean, but that is the name of their organization. They had a petition that successfully removed examples of evolution such as the Archaeopteryx. For those who don't know, the Archaeopteryx is a feathered dinosaur that is thought to have glided, an important example of evolution at work. So the Society for Textbook Revise got these things taken out of textbooks in high schools in South Korea, and thereby weakening the teaching of evolution. Now, you may have guessed that this group is an offshoot of a fundamentalist Christian creationist group. No surprise there. And what was so depressing was that they somehow got this petition out, or this petition to be issued on their behalf to publishers, and the publishers were the ones who decided, as opposed to consulting the scientific community as to what would be in a science textbook. In this case, biologists. I think you should probably talk to a biologist if you want to know what's going to be in a biology textbook, or if you want to decide what's going to be in a biology textbook, I should say. But it didn't really happen in this case, and you might be a bit surprised to hear that. I mean, South Korea, they have a problem with creationists. That's sort of the thing you think, that's the southern U.S. No other places really worry about that. Well, in a survey done in 2009, it showed that 1/3 of South Koreans do not believe in evolution. Of that 1/3, 41% say there is insufficient evidence, 39% deny it for religious reasons, and 17% do not understand the theory. Now that 17% is actually a bit more respectable, although the onus is on them to try and learn about evolution. It's that 39% who deny it for religious reasons that bother me. And also the 41% who say there's insufficient evidence. The ones who deny it for religious reasons are basically using a non sequitur. Science is pretty agnostic towards religion. It's only persuaded by evidence. And if that evidence comes from a religion, okay, but again, it needs to be independent, evidence that is not bound to an ideology of any kind. And those who say the 41% who say there is insufficient evidence for evolution are just denying the obvious evidence that is everywhere. In fact, they're trying to hide it by getting things like the Archaeopteryx removed from textbooks. Now, this is what I was mentioning a little earlier, the loud, obnoxious assholes. They're perfectly free to not believe in evolution. I don't think I have the right to make anyone believe it. They don't have the right to make me not believe it, though. And more importantly, they do not have the right to decide for the children of South Korea, or the children of any country, what they will or will not be taught as science. Unless you are of the scientific community, I generally don't care what you have to say on the subject. You have to show that you understand something before you can actually have an informed opinion. Not that I'm trying to suggest we need some sort of science elite deciding what will or will not be in the textbooks. Science isn't a special club. Anyone can learn about science. And if you can provide some real evidence or some real concerns that undermine the theory of evolution, I would love to hear them. But of the creationists I've heard speak, that just isn't the case. And the ones who use religious beliefs are just not using proper evidence. It's, like I said, a non sequitur. And it's also why the theory of evolution should continue to be taught in spite of their objections. Now, the most troubling stat to come out of all of this is that 40% of biology teachers in South Korea do not believe there is sufficient evidence for the theory of evolution. Now, that seems like grounds for dismissal, to be honest. I don't know why a biology teacher, or why anyone would be hired as a biology teacher if they didn't actually understand the enormous amount of evidence for evolution out there. But I don't actually understand the education system in South Korea enough to comment on that as in-depth as I would like. It just, that singular stat is quite troubling and quite annoying, to be honest. Now, this would be so much easier if the loud, obnoxious assholes who are trying to change the textbooks would just admit that they're wrong. The fact that the evidence is there, and it can be difficult. It can be difficult when your worldview is being challenged and you sort of create this identity of yourself, these people who create these creation science bogus degrees from these insular little institutions, the type where they don't really listen to criticism and they only have one textbook that matters, and it was written by some questionable individuals thousands of years ago. And before I say any more, I'm not trying to pick on Christians here by any stretch. It's certain types of Christians, and it's not just Christians. This problem is also happening in Europe with Muslim immigrants who really dislike the theory of evolution as well. I'd imagine there are lots of religions out there who dislike the theory of evolution. This is sort of open to any group. They don't even have to be religious, actually, if they have no real reason for, no real claims against evolution, but nonetheless want to take it out of textbooks. Well, we've got a problem. And it's a problem I hope we never stop fighting and resisting against. I wish I could give you some better news today, but sometimes stories related to science just kind of suck. But let's not give up the fight. Thanks for watching.